We have many people here tonight who have been here before, who know about us, and we welcome you. We're grateful that you've come tonight. There may be many more. We could not have made these gatherings possible without you, without our members, without those who are interested in B'nai Shalom, without those who are helping out tonight. And we want to mention Harlan Reed and Janet, his wife, who is now in the kitchen, and they will be leading us in Hebrew dances when all else is done. If you wish to join in those, we have music. They are excellent teachers. They're not Jewish, but it doesn't matter. And they usually lead us every gathering. You're not Jewish, are you? Harlan, you're not Jewish. I mean, okay. No, he's a Hopi.
Hopi is.
He's our resident Hopi. Yeah. Great. So we were formed January 26, 2014, and we have been growing very steadily. We think that we know that our members realize that we are a bridge between Judaism and the rest of the world, actually. And we meet together to bring together the tribes of Israel so that they can prosper and so that the Lord's work can be accomplished even by the smallest and the very least of us. If you are new to us and have attended previously and not signed up as a member, would you please make one of these out? If you have moved, if you have changed your emails, your phone numbers, would you please make one of these out with the changes? You can put it in the donation box, fold it up, put it in there. At the same time, if you make when you make a donation, and we love donations, please make out one of these. Keep the white one, put the yellow one in the box there, so that we can have a record of your donations. Be kind enough to take a card or several and give it to others you know, so that they can find out who we are and what we do. The tables have been set up so that you don't have to form a line. We don't want you to get in line. You don't have to get in line. Go around and go through whatever table you wish. Our speaker tonight is Dave Lefevre. Phil Ortega will help you with the transliterated hymn, which was written by a member of our Salt Lake group. From Kim Cooney. Kim, would you raise your hand? There you go. Kim is going to make a presentation here on the stage. And presents all around the area and in other states. And if you have genealogical questions, that is a part of the B'nai Shalom. Please don't hesitate to go see her.
The state presidency was kind enough to get permission for our group to meet there on Monday evenings, and we enjoy that. I do want to let you know about our meeting next month. We are having a gal, if you do have Jewish ancestry, and you have pictures of headstones that you can't read because they're in Hebrew. We have a gal coming, her name's Madeline Eisenberg. She's an expert at that type of thing. She's gone all over the world, researched in a lot of Eastern Europe and Western Europe. She calls herself a glyphologist, which is translated means she's good at reading headstones. And she has a lot of experience. She's going to come and tell us how to read what's there. I've learned a lot just helping folks, because I've actually had people email me.
What is autosomal? Which one's the father and which one's the mother's line?
Okay, so there's Y-DNA testing, which that's the father's line, the patriarchal line, right? Because only men can test Y-DNA, because only men have a Y chromosome. There's mitochondrial DNA, which anyone can take, but it's the mother's line. So a lot of people who suspect they have Jewish ancestry actually will take that mitochondrial DNA test, and the reason they do it is because if they can prove that they have Jewish ancestry on that line, because of the way Jewishness is, I'm not sure how you would say that, Marlena. If you just, no, you order a kit online from the company, either Ancestry DNA, 23andMe, or Family Tree DNA, which if you suspect you have Jewish ancestry, Family Tree DNA is really the company you should test with, because it was started by 2 Jewish men, and their express purpose in doing that was to help Jews who had survived the Holocaust to find potential family members. And so that was their purpose in doing it. And it has the largest Jewish database, because Jews typically test there. You order a kit through one of the companies online, they mail it to you. In the case of Family Tree DNA, it has swabs, so you swab your cheek. In the case of Ancestry or 23andMe, you spit in a tube, which don't try to do it in one day. I did both in one day. I could hardly talk when I got done. No spit left. So yeah, so you spit that in, they mail it in, they do all their things, and then your results come through your kit online. You actually see your results online, and you will see matches. So I was talking to a gal who, her father was adopted. She just did her Ancestry DNA test, and we were talking about that, and she will probably start to see matches from her father's side of the family, even though she doesn't know who his parents were, his biological parents. There are people out there related to him that will have tested and will start showing up. Like I said, we have people Jewish specific that come from, we've had folks come from Israel and Europe. We've had a lot of people from the East Coast and Florida area, California. We bring in people from a lot of different places. The guy that started Family Tree DNA, Bennett Greenspan, has been up here to speak at least 3 different times. So we have great speakers. And like I said, we just had Cindy Engel from Cindy's List, who, like I said, she's not Jewish specific, but wow, she got a great reception last month at our group. So.
Well, first I want to say happy 50th year to B'nai Shalom. That's really a beautiful accomplishment. I was thrilled when Marlena asked me to introduce Dave, because not only is Dave my friend, he is also my mentor. In fact, I would call Dave the teacher's teacher, or the scholar's scholar, meaning that he teaches and understands things on a level up here, and yet, when he's teaching the youth, he has them eating out of his hand. That he is so accessible to everyone, and I have literally never known anyone who is as widely studied in such a variety of topics as Dave is. He is comfortable in every book of Scripture and has written on every book of Scripture. And as I said, he's my mentor. When I have a question, it's Dave that I go to. So you probably know, I know many of you have been in Dave's classes over the years, that he has taught seminary and institute, that he's taught for many years at BYU Education Week. He's published in a number of books and journals. He also has his own blog on his website where he does wonderful articles nearly every week recently on a variety of topics. And so he's just, for me, he is a gold mine of information and a true inspiration. Dave is married to Melanie, who is one of my dearest friends. They have 7 children between them. And they have just recently moved to Maltby, where they have a farm where it's quite an inspiration to see all the beautiful growing things there, including lots of animals. So without taking up further time, my friend Dave Lefevre.
Jeremiah, I think, is the Rodney Dangerfield of the Bible. He just doesn't get any respect. And it's very interesting. So I just did this quick check. If you went to Deseret Book's website, And you said, how many books are there on Isaiah versus Jeremiah? What's your guess? How many Isaiah? Pick a number. 78, that's a lot. 50? 65, okay. How many on Jeremiah? 2. So, this is just a quick scan, right? I may have missed a few, but I got 20 Isaiah books that are currently in print and for sale. Got 3 for Jeremiah. And frankly, 2 of these are not of much value. One is just, the best one there of the 3 is 40 years old. Right, so that gives you a sense of how much attention Jeremiah has received. There's not much. And I think that's a shame because Jeremiah is a prophet that is on every bet the par with Isaiah. He writes some beautiful poetry and prose. He tells of great, destruction, a time of destruction and the wickedness of his people. He faces all of those things, but he's also trying to work with his people as a prophet, just like Isaiah. A lot of parallels. I think Jeremiah must have felt a real affinity for Isaiah. You see some of Isaiah's phrases coming through. Time-wise, Isaiah was, roughly 100 years before Jeremiah. So you see that he was familiar with Isaiah because you'll see some of the themes and even phrases from Isaiah show up in Jeremiah's writings. So we'll see if we can give Jeremiah a little more respect tonight, maybe, as a result of our conversation. So one of the interesting things in the Book of Mormon is this. If somebody go ahead and read the scripture. Can you read it nice and loud? Who can see it right there?
There's no scripture.
Background.
Hey, it helps if it works. There you go. That scripture. How about read that scripture? Where's that microphone?
And also the prophecies of the holy prophets from the beginning, even down to the commencement of the reign of Zedekiah, and also many prophecies which have been spoken by the mouth of Jeremiah.
So this is Nephi talking about what's on the brass plates. Thank you. And he says that the prophecies of Jeremiah are on the brass plates. Have you thought about that? That's a contemporary. Like Jeremiah is the same time as Lehi. The very first time that Jeremiah wrote down his prophecies was 8 years before Lehi left Jerusalem. So how did his prophecies get on the brass plates? Now we don't know the answer. We could speculate, but it is fascinating to me that Jeremiah, basically in real time, his stuff's being recorded on these permanent brass plates by somebody. Zoram, I don't know. It certainly wouldn't be Laban. Because Laban would just say he was dead. From what we know of Laban, he'd be anti-Jeremiah. But somehow, they're on the plate. So I just think that's a fun little thing about Jeremiah to recognize. In terms of the book itself, this is the number of words in the book of Jeremiah in English. I have it in Hebrew too, but I thought it'd be fun because I didn't have all the other books in Hebrew. So I want to compare Jeremiah to some other books and look at the number of words. So just in terms of sheer size, Jeremiah's got 21,673 words. Genesis, which is a pretty big book, it's got 20,000. Psalms, 19,000. Ezekiel, 19,000, about the same as the Psalms. And look at Isaiah. Jeremiah is significantly bigger than Isaiah. A lot of people don't realize that. They think that as we look at the Old Testament, we go, well, it goes Isaiah, or Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and they're in order of size, but they're not. If they were put in order of size, that would be Jeremiah first, second Ezekiel, third Isaiah. And in some of the ancient manuscripts, some of the ancient Hebrew manuscripts, that's the order they're in. Because they did put it according to size. They put Jeremiah first. So, and then the last one I have here is the 12 prophets. So Daniel all the way to the end of the Old Testament, that's only 14,000 words. So Jeremiah has a lot to say. And I think we want to make sure we give him his due. Jeremiah's book has a complex structure to it. There's a lot of great history. There's a lot of theology. There's things that are helpful for us to kind of understand. So I want to take you through some of those tonight and see if that, when we leave tonight, you'll have a better ability to understand Jeremiah and appreciate his writings. So let's start first of all with this call. I do a microphone and it'd be fun if people would volunteer. This is the very first verse.
The words of Jeremiah, the son of Hilkiah, of the priests that were in Anathoth, in the land of Benjamin.
Thank you. So do we know where this is? This is a fun map, and it's not as bright as I would hope it would be, but I can point to it here. Here's Jerusalem. That's the Temple Mount right there.
Where?
Can you see? My little pointer's not very bright. So here's the Temple Mount. So this is an aerial picture today. I just pulled it off the maps, off the website. So here's Jerusalem. Here's the Mount of Olives. Here's Mount Scopus right there where the BYU Jerusalem Center is, that kind of thing. There's Anathoth. It's about 3 miles from Jerusalem if you were just walking straight. Just for fun, I put the directions in. I put an address in Anathoth, and I put the Temple Mount, and I said, Google, how far is that? And it's 7.1 miles if you're driving it. Right? But if you're walking it, it's about 3 miles. So it's very close. It's you know, if you live in Anathoth, you could easily walk into Jerusalem in just an hour or less. So it's very close. The other thing he says there is that he was the son of Hilkiah. We don't know anything about his dad. There's a man by the name of Hilkiah that plays into this time period, but it's not him, because that's the chief priest. His dad's not the chief priest, but he is a priest, because he is of the priests that were at that time. So Jeremiah himself is a priest. He's of that line. But there's no indication in his book that he ever actually works in the temple as a priest. He is familiar with it. He knows it very well. He spends time in the temple. He preaches in there, but there's no record of him administering in the temple as a priest. But his dad did, obviously. And he was of that line. Okay. Here's his name in Hebrew. Can you pronounce that? Who can read the Hebrew here?
The land of Benjamin, he wasn't a Benjamite, but he was a Levite.
So he was a Levite, but Anathoth is one of the priestly towns. They were designated towns from David, right, initially, and he said, priests live here, because Levites needed an inheritance. So it was one of those towns, but it's in the land of the tribe of Benjamin. Right, so Yirmiyahu. Jeremiah's name, and get it right here. Yahweh establishes whom he appoints, or Yahweh has appointed, depending on how you look at the vowels. So that's a good name for Jeremiah. The Lord has appointed me to my mission. That's a great name for him. Very appropriate for what he does. We don't know exactly when he was born, but this gives us a little hint about his mission here. To whom the word of the Lord came in the days of Josiah, the son of Ammon, king of Judah, in the 13th year of his reign. So his mission starts in the 13th year of King Josiah. That's 627 BC. Just to put that in time frame. 627 BC. And it came also in the days of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, unto the end of the 11th year of Zedekiah. That's a name you should be familiar with. If you've read the Book of Mormon, the first Nephi, chapter 1, happens in the first year of the reign of Zedekiah, is when Lehi has his vision. He's the last king of Judah before the Babylonian destruction. So Jeremiah's reign goes from all the way to the days of Josiah through the end of the reign of Zedekiah, son of Josiah, before they're all carried away to Babylon. And that's just, and then it kind of ends there in terms of the heading on his book. But Jeremiah's mission didn't end there. He gets carried away to Egypt, as we'll see in a little bit. But that's where those are the 4 kings that he worked under. So we don't know his age, as I said, but we get a hint from this one. When he gets his call in 627 BC, he says to the Lord, Lord God, I cannot speak, for I am a child. The Hebrew word child there can simply mean someone who is less than 30 years old. But we also know from Jeremiah, because at this point in his ministry, he was not married when he received his call. And Hebrew young men, typically at this period of time, would marry somewhere around 17, 18 years old. So he was probably younger than that. So if we just to pick a number, if we said if Jeremiah was 18 when he got his call, just to have a sense of this, I think it's kind of fun. When Josiah dies in 609, then he's 36. When Zedekiah starts his reign, and his fellow prophet Lehi receives his call, Jeremiah is 48 years old. We don't know how old Lehi is, but he probably would have been about that same age, because he had 4 older, teenage type boys. And then when Jerusalem falls in 587, he would have been my age. I'm 58 this year, so I think it's good to have that in perspective. That's a long time, 40-year ministry, and that's just when Jerusalem falls. Like I said, then he continues on after that. Jeremiah was taught the nature of his mission this way. So, again, we'll have somebody else if you would like to read this scripture. Jan, would you read? People in the front will get you.
Then the Lord put forth his hand and touched my mouth. And the Lord said unto me, Behold, I have put my words in thy mouth. See, I have this day set thee over the nations and over the kingdoms, to root out and to pull down and to destroy and to throw down, to build and to plant.
So that gives you a good sense of Jeremiah's mission there. You see the similarities to Isaiah. Do you remember in Isaiah's call in Isaiah chapter 6, and he says, I can't speak very well, and the Lord takes, I'm a man of unclean lips, actually, right? And the Lord takes a coal and touches to his lips. So Jeremiah has a similar thing. The Lord touches his mouth with his fingers, and he has that experience where he says, I'll put my words in your mouth. And what are Jeremiah's words that he gets to say? To root out and to pull down and to build and to plant. Now, the other ones that are in italics aren't in the best manuscripts of Jeremiah. They're in our King James Version, but they're actually redundant. And there's some other references in Jeremiah where he alludes to his mission. This becomes a theme for him, to root out and pull down, to build up and to plant. Those contrasting terms. You'll see those four terms all throughout his book. So, as he gets this call, for the longest time, initially his call is to root out and pull down. He doesn't do a lot of the planting and building up. But at some point in his mission, and I think it's around 588, just before the destruction of Jerusalem, seems to be the best indication when he starts to finally speak of building up and of planting. And it's triggered by an event that we'll talk about in his life. The Lord continued in his call. This is all from Jeremiah chapter 1. Moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Jeremiah, what seest thou? And I said, I see a rod of an almond tree. All right, so he's having this little, he sees a branch, a rod of an almond tree. And the Lord said unto me, thou hast well seen, for I will hasten my word. Now again, you have to understand the Hebrew to appreciate what the Lord is saying here. The word for almond is shaked. The word for hasten is shakad. So it's a play on words. And you see that a lot in Jeremiah. But you got to look at the Hebrew to get that. But he uses these words that are similar words, and that structure is built in there. So the Lord says, I'll hasten my work. I'm showing you an almond, and that means that I will hasten my work. And then the second one he says, the word of the Lord came unto me a second time, saying, what seest thou? And I said, I see a seething pot, and the face thereof is toward the north. Or as another translation has it, it is tilting toward us from the north. That's a better description of what it says. And the Lord said unto me, out of the north shall an evil break forth upon the inhabitants of the land. So he sees a pot, it's boiling, and it's just about to spill over from the north to the south. And the Lord uses that to teach him about the destruction. Now, where does the destruction come from if you live in Israel? It comes from the north, right? Assyria in Jeremiah's earliest part of the ministry, and certainly in Isaiah's day. But even Isaiah prophesied that one day Babylon's going to be the power. And Jeremiah's going to see that same transition. And he's going to watch it in his lifetime. Assyria will be destroyed, and Babylon will become the rising power. But both of them come from the north. Technically, if you look at a map, they're almost due east. Right, here's a map. Here's Jerusalem. Here's Babylon. It's almost due east. But they always go up this way and down, so they come from the north when they attack. Because you don't want to cross that desert. All right. Now let's look at the structure of the book. That's kind of his call, where he comes from. This is a complex chart. Don't try to memorize it. It's just a reference. It's just to give you a sense of this. The important thing to take away from this is there are two books of Jeremiah. And we don't recognize this very much. We have the one that comes from the Masoretic text, the Hebrew line. That's what we have in our Bible. And that's the Western version of Jeremiah. There's an Eastern version of Jeremiah that's transmitted down through the Greek, what's called the Septuagint translation. The Eastern version of Jeremiah There's an Eastern version of all the books of the Bible, but most of them are pretty much the same. There's little words that are different in that. Jeremiah's is completely different. Very, very different. So it starts off kind of the same, the first little bit, but then it quickly diverges. And again, you can just kind of glance through the numbers and see where the chapters are radically different. And not only are they different, but as the asterisks indicate, there's entire verses lacking, and in some cases the verses have been reordered. The double asterisk means they've been reordered. So the idea here is that there were two editors of the book of Jeremiah. At some point, early on, there was the book of Jeremiah, and then two people took it to different places, probably Egypt and Babylon, the Western version and the Eastern version. And the Eastern version would have been Egypt, by the way. That's where they spoke Greek. And the Western version would have been Babylon. So they diverged, they collected these writings, and for whatever reason, they put them in a different order. So, all right, we'll explore that when we get to the scrolls a little bit.
Does the Dead Sea Scrolls have a version?
So there are little fragments of Jeremiah in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Unfortunately, unlike Isaiah, there's no complete scroll of Jeremiah. They're just little pieces. But it is interesting that among the pieces, they find some that look like the Western text and some that look like the Eastern text. So the people at Qumran had both. Right? That's the conclusion. They were collecting Jeremiah from both sources. So Jeremiah is one of the best examples that we have of this kind of different editor. We don't see editors in the Bible very much like we do in the Book of Mormon. You know, Mormon and Moroni stood up and said, "Here I am, I'm the editor." And they made themselves clear and evident in the text. They spoke, they had their name there. The biblical editors don't do that. They stay in the background. They surface every once in a while in little comments they make. And you see some of those in Jeremiah, you know, where they'll say, like, "This is Jeremiah's writings so far." And you go, "So far?" Right? It just shows up in the middle of the book. So they're kind of there. You can see them working, but they're not evident like they are. But here, the differences in the text that they have shown in Jeremiah is what allows us to see the hand of the editors, probably better than any other book in the Bible.
Does those numbers, do they refer to chapters?
Chapters. Yes, sorry if I did explain that.
Are there chapters missing, it looks like?
There are chapters missing, but the Greek version, the Septuagint version, about 14% shorter than the Western version. So there's much missing. And as I say, they're also in a very different order. Yeah. And feel free to jump in with questions, right? This is, as the program says, this is interactive. So you're welcome to do that anytime you want. All right, so let's move on. Scribes. Now we'll kind of get into it. Is there a question? Yeah, please.
I was just curious to know if the rearrangement of the different verses really changes the overall meaning of any of the chapters, or
It does. Yeah, that's what's fascinating, right? When you study the Greek version of Jeremiah versus the other version, because they've rearranged things, it changes the theme, it changes the tone of the book. And the biggest change is that there's a chunk of Jeremiah called the Prophecies to the Nations. In our Jeremiah, it's the very end of the book. It's the last thing in there. And they're in a different order. They're actually ordered from south to north. So whoever put it together deliberately put Egypt first, and then Elam, and then they work their way up around to Babylon. Babylon's the last one. In the Eastern version, the Greek version, they're much more random. There's no geographical thing. They're not done by size. There's no way to know why they have them in the order, except that my guess is that's the way Jeremiah gave them. So I think the Eastern version preserves the original way that Jeremiah received them, you know, just over the course of his life. And then these oracles are lumped together, though. But they put them right in the middle of the book. And they lead into it. And it looks like that's the right place. Like whoever did our version of Jeremiah moved them deliberately to the end of the book, because we have the same verse leading right up to it. And it says, "These are the words of the Lord to Jeremiah, prophecies against the nations." And then there's nothing in our book. Right? The next verse starts telling a different story. But in the Greek version, that's where they show up, right after those words, and you have the prophecies to the nations. So somebody clearly moved them around.
interesting.
Yeah, please.
Going back, what
Shaked.
being almost exactly the same.
Hasten.
Yeah,
Shaked.
that suggests the thought process of a poet. That's
Yes.
what poets do. And I'd be interested in your opinion in terms of poetry, Jeremiah versus Isaiah.
So that's great. We're going to talk about poetry, but you can turn that off so it doesn't buzz. But the short of it is, Jeremiah is every bit the poet as Isaiah. He has more prose in his book than Isaiah does. Isaiah has much more poetry, but Jeremiah is very much poetic. So I brought this. Some of you may have seen this before. This is Jewish Study Bibles, the Tanakh version. So if you want to study a great Hebrew Bible, this is probably the best one that I know. In this, they have formatted Jeremiah in poetic form when he's doing poetry. So you can get the sense of it, right? And Hebrew poetry, as you probably are aware, has nothing to do with rhyming, meter. It has to do with parallelism of phrases, so things go like that. So there's a lot of this, and you see the parallelism when they organize it this way. But then you flip the pages, and you see chunks of prose, right? Where it just goes into prose. So, yeah, I brought this, we can pass it around. You started the question, so you can start it. But that's kind of a fun way to see how Jeremiah is. Okay, good. Let's talk about scribes then for a minute. There's one obvious scribe that I'm sure you're aware of. Who is Jeremiah's scribe? Who? Baruch. Right? You've heard of Baruch. His name is Baruch, the son of Neriah. This is an actual photograph. I wish, I don't know. But we may not have a photograph of Baruch, but we have the next best thing. We have his signature. And they found this in Jerusalem. The provenance is unknown because it was found on the antiquities market. So basically somebody found it and then kind of stuck it in their pocket and walked away with it and then sold it on the antiquities market. But it probably came from the burnt house in Jerusalem. So it's from the time, it's the right period of time. And if you can read that scroll, and I'm sure you can all read this perfectly. That's what it says. I wrote it in English at the top. I wrote it in Hebrew at the bottom. Leberach Yahu ben Nerchayahu Hesper. So it's belonging to Barak Yahu, Barak, that's his full name, the son of Neriah, the scribe. So it's the guy. This is his seal. And at some point he had a ring or something, and he sealed a letter, or he sealed a document with this, and then that got preserved. And so now it's a piece of clay that's dried out and everything, but you can read his name. So he's Jeremiah's main scribe. And Baruch is kind of a hero with Jeremiah. His name's in Jeremiah's book 23 times. And frankly, this is General Conference, by the way, if you can hear that. I don't know. No, we don't know where it's coming from. It's coming through the speakers.
Oh, I think we know where it's coming from.
Yeah, but anyway, that's your own conference, so just you can enjoy the music. His name is mentioned 23 times in the book. Baruch risked much for Jeremiah. He risked his life for Jeremiah. He was a great friend to this guy, and very impressive guy. So we'll
Is that what he said?
or is it what?
Or is that what he said?
Is that what Jeremiah said? Baruch. Oh, because he's the scribe and he gets to tell his own story. Yeah. He's actually, he humbles himself significantly in the story. So if he's trying to brag about himself in Jeremiah's writings, he doesn't do a very good job. But what we do see is a man who is true to Jeremiah and faithful. And there's a great story which we'll talk about where he risks his life. But a lot of people don't realize there's a second scribe in Jeremiah. And that's this guy. His name is Sariah. And he too has a seal, right? So he has a seal right there. You can see it. It says Sariah, son of Neriah. He's Baruch's brother. Right? So these two brothers serve a dual role. Now, Sariah was some kind of leader in the king's court. So as he's talked about, there's a story in chapter 51 of Jeremiah, so right at the very end of Jeremiah, where he gets to go to Babylon as part of the delegation. And so Jeremiah has him write some of his writings on a scroll and take it with him. And when he gets there, then he says to Sariah, Well, it doesn't say here, so that's a different part, we're gonna talk about that. But when he gets there to Babylon, he tells Sarai to take the scroll that he wrote of Jeremiah's writings, read it out loud, it condemns Babylon, read it out loud in the city of Babylon, then wrap it up in a stone and throw it into the Euphrates River as a testimony to they're gonna sink down just like the stone of the prophecy. Right? It's called a simile curse. If you haven't heard of a simile curse before, where you do things, they're in the Book of Mormon, they're kind of fun. They're also a lot in the Old Testament. So this was a simile curse. Yeah, so he had Sarai go and do that. So he's the other scribe, and he seems to have been, if you're looking at the two scribes, if you're trying to find the two scribes who created these two versions of Jeremiah that we have, the Greek and the Hebrew, these are the guys. So Baruch probably did the Hebrew version, and Sarai probably did the Greek version, or vice versa. We don't know which one for sure, but one of them did one, one did the other. It's very likely. The scholars can trace this divergence of the two versions back that far. They feel like this is the right time, and most scholars agree these are probably the two guys that did it, because one went to Babylon and one went to Egypt after the captivity. Okay. So let's talk about Baruch a little bit. So there's an experience that he had and demonstrates Baruch's friendship. And I'll just read this real quickly. And it came to pass in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, that this word came unto Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, take thee a roll of a book, and write therein all the words that I've spoken against thee, or against Israel, and against Judah, and against all the nations from the day that I spake unto thee from the days of Josiah even to this day. So he hasn't, apparently before this time, has never written anything down. This is 605 BC. He hasn't written anything down. The Lord says, now it's time to write all these things down. Everything you've ever said from the days of Josiah to now. And it may be that the house of Judah will hear all the evil which I purpose to do unto them, that they may return every man from his evil way, that I may forgive their iniquity and their sin. It may be. The Lord says, it won't. But it may be. Then Jeremiah called Baruch, the son of Neriah, this is the first time he's mentioned, and Baruch wrote from the mouth of Jeremiah all the words of the Lord, which he had spoken unto him upon the roll of the books. That means a scroll. So somehow they got a parchment scroll. Jeremiah bought it, Baruch brought it, I don't know where they got it. And then they sat down for how long? I don't know. Hours, days, and Baruch wrote everything Jeremiah said for the last 20 years. Right? That's an amazing accomplishment. And so then Jeremiah says to Baruch, I am shut up. I cannot go into the house of the Lord. He was under house arrest at this time because the king didn't like him. He and Jehoiakim didn't get along very well. So he says, I can't go to the house of the Lord. Therefore, go thou, Baruch, and read in the roll. Oops. It's not me. There we go. And read in the roll, which thou hast written from thy mouth, the words of the Lord in the ears of the people in the Lord's house upon the fasting day. So go to the temple and read 20 years of Jeremiah's preachings, the sermons of Jeremiah. And it may be that they will present their supplication before the Lord and return everyone from his evil way, for great is the anger and fury of the Lord. And Baruch the son of Neriah did according to all that Jeremiah the prophet commanded him, reading in the book the words of the Lord in the Lord's house. So he went to the temple very publicly, read Jeremiah's words before all the people. He was asked to come back, I will read all this, and do it again. And they said, oh, come into our chamber and read this. So he read it to all the scribes. And somebody else said, come and read this to us, Baruch. And so he went in and read it to him again. Some of the king's leaders, some of the people in the court. And so they said, I like this one, verse 17. And they asked Baruch, saying, tell us now, how didst thou write all these words at his mouth? And Baruch answered them, he pronounced all the words unto me with his mouth, and I wrote them with ink in the book. Okay. Thank you for that detailed explanation. But you can imagine if Oliver Cowdery, if someone said to Oliver Cowdery, so how did you write the words that Joseph Smith said to you with the Book of Mormon? You were translating the Book of Mormon. Well, he talked, I wrote. That's kind of how it worked. What do you want to know? So that's Bruce answer. So they say, go hide, I like this, thou and Jeremiah, that no man may know where you be. Because what their plan was to take this to the king. So they go, yeah, you better lie low. So he and Jeremiah get out. Jeremiah's already in the house arrest, so I don't know how you can hide anymore. But so they take it to the king, and here's what the king does. He's sitting in his winter house, meaning it's in the winter, right? So he's cold, so there's a fire going. He's probably in Ramat Rahal or something. So he has this fire going, and the fire is burning there. As they read the scroll of Jeremiah, he says, "Hand me that scroll." And they hand it to him. He pulls out his knife, and he slices off a few columns from the scroll and tosses it in the fire. And then he hands it back and says, "Keep reading." And so they read a little more, and he goes, "That's good." Slice, fire. And this went on until the whole scroll was destroyed. 20 years of Jeremiah's preaching, painfully written down by Baruch for, how long? Destroyed by the king. So Jeremiah says, that's okay. The Lord tells him, take another roll and write in it all the former words that were in the first roll that the king burned. And so he does that, and then he condemns the king for what he's done. In the last verse, then it says, then took Jeremiah another roll, gave it to Baruch the scribe, the son of Neriah, who wrote therein from the mouth of Jeremiah all the words of the book which Jehoiakim the king of Judah had burned in the fire, and there were added besides unto them many like words. So I got a bonus. They got 20 years worth, and then they got some more to boot. So like that. So Baruch risked his life for Jeremiah by going and doing this. Jeremiah couldn't do it. Baruch went and did it instead, and that's not the only time he does that. Okay, let's talk about Jeremiah the man. We know more about Jeremiah than we do of any other Old Testament prophet in the major prophets and minor prophets. Now we know a little more about people like Elijah because their story is written in story format, right? So we hear all of that. But Jeremiah, among all the prophets, Isaiah, Daniel, Ezekiel, all of them, we know more about him personally than anyone else. So it's kind of fun to play with these details. But his book, unfortunately, is not written like a biography. It's not in chronological order. In fact, it's ghastly in chronological order. He jumps around from year to year to year to year. If you're going through the book, chapters 1 to 52, it's all over the place. The chronology is all messed up. So one of the things that's helpful is to have some understanding of who Jeremiah is and what his times were like. So we'll talk about some of those. We already talked a little bit about Jeremiah's call in chapter 1. This is the next most likely thing. So you see it's chapter 16. This probably comes after chapter 1 chronologically, even though in the book it's not until chapter 16. Then the word of the Lord came unto me also, saying, thou shalt not take thee a wife, neither shalt thou have sons or daughters in this place. So he's not allowed to marry. It's part of his calling. Now you remember Isaiah, in his case, had children and gave them names. And their names were prophetic. So his children were part of his calling because his children's names reflected the message he was trying to reach to the people. Jeremiah, in his case, his life, the Lord calls him to have his life reflect his message. Because I don't want you to have a wife or children, he says, because enter not the house of because it's going to be destruction, right? Jeremiah is representing potential destruction. Then verse 5, it jumps ahead and says, for thus saith the Lord, enter not into the house of mourning, neither go there to lament nor bemoan them, this loss that you won't have. For I have taken away my peace from this people. And he says, and you'll not go into the house of feasting to sit with them to eat or to drink. So Jeremiah is not to mourn, and he's not to celebrate. Jeremiah is called to be a loner. Can't get married, can't have children, can't mourn, can't celebrate. Just live alone, stand up and prophesy. Now that's a tough calling. That's a tough calling. Now I like to think, because Jeremiah, as we'll see later in his book, gets carried away into Egypt. And after Jerusalem is destroyed, he gets taken down to Egypt, and he ends up there, and his book just ends there. Jeremiah's in Egypt. I like to think that Jeremiah, at about the age of 58, 59, was able to finally get married. I think the Lord said, good, your mission's over, do what you want. I don't know. It doesn't say that. That's completely non-scriptural, but I like to think that because he had to be an example all his life of this. Please.
I'm just wondering, I just find that so strange. Like, are there any other situations in which, like, the prophets have not been allowed to marry?
Not been allowed to marry, not that I know of. The one exception we might say is Paul, but he probably did that at his own choice and remained celibate because he thought he could be a better missionary. Hosea married a harlot, So, I'm skipping ahead a little bit because I want to get to some other parts. Okay, so one of the things about the book of Jeremiah that's helpful, he has some supporters, and these are kind of hidden in his book. And if you read carefully, what you realize after a little while that it's kind of the same family. Because you see all these names and they come up and you don't really know. Well, this is the family. It starts with this guy named Shaphan. So Shaphan must have been an older gentleman. He took a liking to Jeremiah. He believed in his prophecies and he supported Jeremiah. When the king threatens to kill him, Shaphan saves his life. Right? And so it says here, the hand of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, was with Jeremiah, but they should not give him in the hand of the people to put him to death. Ahikam was Shaphan's son. His brother's named Gemariah. Gemariah also plays a role in saving Jeremiah's life. And then their son is named Gedaliah. If you follow through the story, Gedaliah becomes the governor of Judah after they're destroyed by the Babylonians. And he kind of takes care of Jeremiah after the destruction. But then Gedaliah is killed, unfortunately, and so that's when Jeremiah gets carried away. So this family is really important in Jeremiah's book as well, and they play a significant role in everything that happens to him. Now this is one of my favorite stories in the book of Jeremiah that really shows his personality. So as a biographical story, this is the one here. So again, I'll read this for time. Now Pashur, the son of Immer, the priest, who was also the chief governor in the house of the Lord, so he's in charge of the temple, heard that Jeremiah prophesied these things. And the things that he prophesied in the chapter just before this was destruction. If you don't repent, Babylon's going to come. It's kind of Jeremiah's message. So he gives that message. Then Pashur smote Jeremiah the prophet. That word smote means gave him 40 lashes. Right? He didn't just like slap him across the face. This is take off your shirt, give you 40 lashes, you're bleeding in your back, the whole deal. And put him in the stocks that were in the high gate of Benjamin, which was by the house of the Lord. Now, the word stocks, scholars debate what that means a little bit. This is one potential representation in the picture that you can see. His legs and his feet were pinned in, and then they even pinned his head down. They put a board there. So he's in this incredibly uncomfortable position where he's hunched over. And remember, he just got smoked, so his back is bleeding and torn, his skin is torn, and he's in that position for 24 hours. Right? Cramps and the indignity. I mean, I'm sure he had to go to the bathroom. Okay, just that's where he is. So he's bleeding, he's in pain, he's stuck in the stocks 24 hours, he has to stay there, please. That position would keep the wounds open. It would, right? It's because it's stretching them. So it maximizes the pain. You're exactly right. So that's where he is. And the next morning, Pashur comes to release him. On the morrow, Pashur brought forth Jeremiah out of the stocks. Then Jeremiah said unto him, The Lord hath not called thee Pashur. Pashur means freedom. So, right, there's some irony there. The Lord hath not called thee Pashur, but Magor Mishabib. Terror all around. That's a condemnation. When you give somebody a name, that's a condemnation. You're not freedom. You are terror everywhere I can look. For thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will make thee a terror to thyself, see the name, and to all thy friends, and they shall fall by the sword of their enemies, and thine eye shall behold it. And I will give Judah into the hand of the king of Babylon, and he shall carry them captive into Babylon, and shall slay them with the sword. This is why he was put in the stocks and why he was beat, by the way, for saying this stuff. As soon as they release him, he says it again. Shows you Jeremiah's personality. This man had no fear. No fear of these people. Moreover, I will deliver all the strength of the city, and all the labors thereof, and all the precious things thereof, and all the treasures of the kings of Judah will I give in the hands of their enemies, which shall spoil them, and take them, and carry them to Babylon. And thou, Pashur, Mr. Freedom, and all that dwell in thine house shall go into captivity, and thou shalt come to Babylon, and there thou shalt die, and shalt be buried there, and all thy friends to whom thou hast prophesied lies. And then he walks away. And what happens when he walks away is the powerful part about Jeremiah to me. this is the very next verse. And so it doesn't describe the story, but in my head I picture the story as Jeremiah leaves the temple where he's been in prison for the last 24 hours. He walks away, he's going wherever he's going to have someone help him tend his wounds, right, just to kind of help him recover from this experience. And as he's walking away, he has this conversation with the Lord. "O Lord, thou hast deceived me, and I was deceived. Thou art stronger than I, and hast prevailed. But I am in derision daily. Everyone mocketh me. For since I spake, I cried out, I cried violence and spoil." Remember, that's what he's supposed to cry out. "Because the word of the Lord was made a reproach to me, and a derision daily." So he says, I've been doing what you asked for 20 years. And all I've got out of it is mockery and pain. He says, "I will not make mention of him," meaning the Lord. He goes third person here. "Nor speak any more in his name." I'm done. That's it. I can't take this anymore. And he starts to leave. And as he's walking away, the very next phrase stops him up. And he says, "But his word was in my heart as a burning fire, shut up in my bones. And I was weary with forbearing and could not stay." Said another way, I tried not to say the Lord's words, but I couldn't. Just couldn't do it. So he turns right around and starts doing it again. So that gives you a sense of who Jeremiah was. I'm going to skip a couple of these. This is a great picture. It's an actual photograph of Jeremiah. It's him on the left, that's the king on the right. This is Zedekiah. This is from a movie, if you ever get a chance to watch it. It's a pretty good. They didn't have color, that's right. It should be black and white. Oh, sorry. You caught me. But I like this because Zedekiah, and I was going to go this story, but let's just skip it. I'll tell you briefly. Zedekiah, though Jeremiah is in prison by his word, also brings him in secretly and consults with him. Zedekiah is like Mr. Waffle. And so he says, "What should we do, Jeremiah?" And Jeremiah says, "Surrender to the Babylonians and all will be well. The Lord will take care of you." And he goes, "I can't do that. Everybody at court would think I'm an idiot." And he sends him back to prison. And so this is a scene from that movie where they're consulting and Jeremiah is like going, "Look, the Babylonians are right here. They're right there. Surrender now and we can avoid all this pain." And the king goes, "I can't do it." Yeah, I can't do it. So, anyway, fascinating thing. Was there a comment? Please.
As you're reading that beautiful thought process of Jeremiah, it reminded me of the prophet Joseph Smith, who had moments where he wanted, he was just facing so much pain,
Yes.
loss of his children and the hatred around him and stuff. He probably wanted to walk away, but the fire was in him, he couldn't.
Yep.
And that makes me appreciate Jeremiah even more.
The fire was shut up in my bones. That's one of my favorite quotes from this book. All right. Let's take a look at the book of Jeremiah's structure just a little bit. As I mentioned, it's in a different order. It does all these things. But how did it get there? Right? We talked about these two other scribes and everything. Some scholars see that Jeremiah's book is organized around this phrase, "The word of the Lord came unto me," or came unto Jeremiah. And you see this phrase in his book 58 times. The only other prophet that uses this phrase is Ezekiel. He has it 60 times. They're peers. Jeremiah and Ezekiel were, at the same period of time. They both use this phrase. The other prophets really don't use it like this.
How many times?
58 for Jeremiah, 60 for Ezekiel. So the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah, and you see this, and it's usually tied to something that he's either speaking or, in this case, writing. So I pulled 4 different places where it says, "Write a scroll." Then Jeremiah took another roll and gave it to Baruch the scribe. Well, we already read this, and he wrote
Hear these songs in Hebrew. Hebrew is a language that I speak, obviously, but there's also such a special language in the heart. What I'm going to do, and you all have this on your table, it looks like we're going to sing a beautiful hymn that says, "Because I've been given much," in English. It just kind of gives you a little deeper meaning in the heart, doesn't it? It's not only a blessing, all that the Lord has given us, but it's also a blessing for us to receive bounty, to be able to share it with others. The more we share, the more we receive. I'm a firm believer that you can never give more than you can receive. It's just a principle. It's just a mikvah. Does anybody know what a mikvah is? It's a covenant that was given to us, a blessing. So we are going to sing this. On the left side of the upper part is a translation, or the transliteration. It's actually written in a phonetic alphabet. So we're going to sing that. And again, all of you know, because I have been given much, right? So I'm sure you can sing this. Look at those words. They're so easy. The first, I'm going to say the first verse before we sing it. Rabot kavati velchen robat elen. Bechol yamal nevitka horta leken. Kav akeleg et matotal. In kol akal le akiotei. Akesh Sarik Yedu Nismok Ali. Let's go ahead and sing that one. Close, isn't it? All of you did extremely well. It was me that messed up the words. Thank you very much.
But his mission was to capture as many or kill as many of the SS officers and troopers as possible. So towards that mission, he found himself in custody of a SS soldier, and his commanding officer told him to kill him and move on. Leo said, "I can't do that. This man is unarmed." The commanding officer said, "I'm giving you a direct battlefield order. It's either him," and then he took out his .45 and said, "or you. I'll give you a minute to think about it." Leo asked for some time by himself and went to the next room and prayed to Heavenly Father. Shortly after he finished his prayer, a mortar round came in and killed the SS officer so that he wouldn't have to do it. Leo was an incredible man. He spent the rest of his life here in the Puget Sound area helping educate children mostly about the realities of the Holocaust. So I hope you'll hold him in your heart.